Hey guys, Chris Arnone with BlizzPro.com, and we're here once again still, BlizzCon 2013. We're here to talk about Hearthstone with Eric and Ben. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
So first off, we want to know, based on the size of Team 5, are you surprised by just the sheer success that Hearthstone has had already while still in closed beta?
I think probably stunned would actually be more an appropriate thing. I mean, we knew that it was going to be a game that a lot of people could get into. We knew that collectible card games are an exciting genre, and that if we could open it up to tons and tons of new people, that there might be a lot of people excited. But I don't think we had any idea that it was going to be this crazy.
Yeah, I think we had a good time when this was first announced. The reaction was, "Oh, card game, right?" And then it was like, seriously, the guy who runs the site, about every hour he gets a tweet, "Do you have a beta key?" Yeah, they're not complaining anymore. It's funny. So Hearthstone, definitely been one of the top games on Twitch for a while now, which is just amazing. How does that whole thing, how's that affected your design, like moving forward and how you're forming the team?
Well, certainly it's affected our thoughts about viewing the game and sort of the esports side of things, because certainly when we were first working on it, we were thinking, hey, maybe there could be some esports component to the game or something like that. And then sort of the Twitch thing happened and people were running tons of tournaments, and we went, okay, I think that this is probably almost certainly going to be part of our thing going forward. We're going to have to do that at some point. And while right now we're just focused on getting to open beta and getting into everybody's hands, it's certainly something we're now talking a lot about, being not in the far future, but closer than that as far as features that support that mode of play, or observer mode, that sort of thing.
Right. It seems like the only question anybody ever seems to ask about is spectator mode. But we also want to know expansions. I mean, with any collectible card game, you create a base set, you expand from there. What have you all, at least in initial thinking, had as far as maybe timelines for when you want to release expansions going forward?
That's something that we're actually not entirely sure as far as how long it'll be after we put the set out when we go to expansion. And some of it, of course, will be based on sort of the length of beta, because that's sort of part of the player's experience. And I don't know. I couldn't really tell you. We're sort of playing it by ear. I can talk a little bit about our philosophies going forward.
That'd be great.
With expansions. And our plans are to sort of put new cards out in two different ways, because we want to make sure that we support all of the different types of players who might be excited about Hearthstone. We want to make sure that we support the players who are, the pretty hardcore players, who they're going to go, I'd like to see the metagame change very quickly. I've burned through all of these cards, show me no more stuff, let me change my deck, that sort of thing. And at the same time, we want to support the players who are probably not consuming that content as quickly. And if you throw new keywords and new mechanics out there pretty quickly, they're going to go, hey, wait a minute, it's a little bit much. So along those lines, we are certainly going to be putting expansions out there that are the traditional, hey, it's a whole bunch of cards, I get them in a booster pack, etc., etc. But we're also planning on doing things that we call adventures, which will be smaller. I play against some single-player content, sort of maybe some couple of bosses in sort of a PvE style. And as I play against that content, I earn cards that are associated with that content, say 20 or 30 different cards, that while they're going to change the metagame, and they're certainly going to have high-level players swapping them in and out of decks and going, oh, great, now I can counter deck so-and-so, or et cetera, we're not going to be including crazy new keywords that would make a player who's consuming the content more slowly go, wait a minute, I'm slow down a little bit, don't throw these keywords at me so quickly.
And just to clarify, when we say keywords, we're talking things like battle cry and combo and sort of new abilities.
Or even any significant mechanic that wasn't really in the game before.
Right. So the top tier players have been mentioning that they believe that certain minions, such as the Shattered Sun Cleric, the Dark Iron Dwarf, have created their own sort of mid-game meta. Are there any plans to adjust those minions anytime soon?
We're actually pretty happy with where the balance is right now, and if we look at sort of the high-level balance, it's all of the classes are within a few percentage points of each other. It's actually pretty close, and our goal going forward is, rather than tinkering with cards very much, I mean, we're changing a couple for the upcoming patch. we're still in beta. We'll probably change another card or two, but we're trying to actually minimize the number of changes we make to existing cards and instead put additional cards into play with, you know, adventures and other things in the future that allow players themselves to sort of, you know, impact that metagame. So they can go, if one strategy is too strong, we'll put some other cards out there that will impact that, and then the players can actually choose sort of where the metagame goes rather than us saying, we don't like that, change that card. You know, we just want to make it more player-owned, and we also want to make it so the game feels very stable, so cards are changing out from under you as little as possible. Will it happen now and again? Probably, but anytime it happens, be assured that behind the scenes we had, you know, weeks of arguing about whether we should do this and all, and if so, what do we need to do?
That's good. As a longtime Magic player, erratas were always one of the most annoying things in trying to keep track of how those worked. So it's good that that's your approach.
Yeah, well, you want to have you want to have a card, and you want to know what it does, and you don't want to come back to the game and go, hey, wait a minute, I thought this card did this other thing. What the heck's going on?
That didn't work right. Oh, wait, no, they changed it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
That could be.
That being said, though, when we do make changes like that, and certainly we did it with Battle Rage, and in the future when we do it with Unleash the Hounds, we have this cool feature that I can then disenchant that card if I want to disenchant that card that was changed and get the Arcane Dust value as if I was just purchasing it. So basically, I can change that card for any other card of the same rarity.
True. So, you know, we've been looking at the statistics about, you know, who's been winning the different heroes, and, you know, you made a big adjustment, like the Rogue was really kind of running away with things, at least statistically by a little bit, and it took a major hit. Now the Hunters are ahead, and, you know, they're gonna come back a little bit. So how much? What's that sort of? Do you have a golden mark of this percentage is too high to where we need to take a look at such and such hero and maybe dial that back?
That's an interesting question, and I think in a lot of ways it depends on sort of the level of play, you know, whether it's, are you talking about 3-star master play, or are you talking about copper and silver play? Because for like copper and silver play, the Hunter is very strong. And if it was only slightly too strong, maybe we wouldn't feel the need to interfere, but because it feels very strong, we're like, okay, we need to step in and bring it down a notch or two. I can say for the top classes, at the highest level, again, they're all within a couple percentage points of each other, and I'm pretty comfortable with that, especially given the way the metagame has been shifting. Certainly, if you look at it day by day, you can go, we don't even know what class is stronger at this point. I mean, I've certainly had people tell me recently, very, very high-level skilled players tell me, it's the Shaman, it's the Rogue, it's the Mage, it's the Paladin, and I've heard just about every class as this is the class that is the power class right now. I certainly expect at some point in the future the metagame will shift and maybe there will be a power class, but right now it's actually been awesome because it's all over the place, and we're still waiting for the players to, you know, keep finding that the perfect combo or whatever.
Yeah, I was curious watching the Invitational today. They had to submit their decks, about a month ago, I think.
Yes.
And the meta had already shifted so much from kind of what we were seeing. We're going to be talking with Noxious a little later about how that shift and how sort of we were seeing a snapshot of the meta a month ago.
Yeah, and it was interesting actually because I was, before that match, I was talking to Trump a little bit, and he was mentioning that he had actually, if he could have submitted decks later, there was a Rogue deck that he was very excited about, which was the only class that you didn't see in the Invitational. So if he had been able to submit it later, you actually would have seen every single class in the Invitational.
So with the proposed change to Mind Control, jumping that mana cost up to 10 instead of 8, a lot of people think it wouldn't help with sort of the gimmicky feel that the Priest has at the moment, that some feel that. Are there plans to make some other changes to the class? You've been mentioning maybe adding other cards as well as just toning down Mind Control?
Right now we don't have any plans to make changes to Priest, but again, we live in a very evolving world, and so it's possible 2 weeks from now we'll see something different, very different than we're seeing right now. I think that change to Mind Control is going to have a huge impact on the metagame because it means that Priests can't all I need to do is get to turn 8, and then I've got this in the bag.
Ragnar staying on the table for 2 turns before you can, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I've also actually seen a whole lot of counter priest meta where people just don't play the big creatures. If you play some small and mid-level creatures, Mind Control is actually a terrible card and
Murloc
probably
deck.
just dead in your hand the entire game. So it sort of depends on where the meta goes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we saw huge turnout today. That Hearthstone, I mean, it was
my
crazy.
goodness.
It was completely packed, standing room only. That just, I was personally even amazed just how just crazy that is. Based on what you saw today, does well, I guess you've kind of answered this. It's really made you all think more about esports and how much of the focus is starting to shift. I mean, yes, you're trying to get the game to open beta, but I mean, how hard are you really looking at that esports, spectator mode, all those kinds of things that people keep asking for?
We're absolutely talking about it. I think the essential thing to realize is this is all happening relatively suddenly. And again, with us focusing on just getting the game out there and us having a small team, we're not really able to suddenly go, okay, and we're going to announce this huge host of esports features. But certainly you can rest assured that we are talking on a regular basis about what we need to do to support that going forward. It's just a question of how does it work with all of the other features we're trying to get out there for, everybody who's excited about Hearthstone.
Has your team had some growth since the closed beta came out to such huge ovation?
It's had some growth, but largely a lot of that's due to the mobile platforms. So as as the iPad has started to kind of build up and come online, we've had to grow in the mobile section. As far as the core team itself, we're really still at basically the same core team that we've made the game with up until this point. That will be changing, obviously, and a lot of that will be in reaction to some of the things you're mentioning, right? With the idea of like, okay, with the idea of the expansions, the adventures, all of this kind of stuff coming online. What does that look like? And that's still kind of a gray area for us as we explore those too. So as the community starts to tell us what they kind of want this game to be, we'll start to make decisions based on that and staff the team appropriately.
And certainly I think we can say based on the Hearthkeeper or the Innkeeper's Invitational today, we've certainly been told a little bit about what the community wants. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, you were talking about mobile, one quick little clarification. So Rob showed you Android support. Is that going to include the Android tablets, not just Android phones?
So Android is as you know, broad market, and there's a
Right.
lot of facets to that. It's more mini splendored in all of its outlets. It's a hydra, if you will. Looking at that, what we have to do from here on is we said we're going on Android. Now we have to determine just what that means. What is that scope? How broad is that spectrum? And a lot of that's going to be based on the fact that we're a small team. We're going to do everything we can to get it on as broad a scope as possible. Beyond that, we really aren't sure where that extends to.
Yeah, I understand. There's so many variants,
Oh, yeah.
and I think Kindle Fire's even run on a variant of Android in some way. There's so many out there. So, Adventure Slide. There's some stuff about adventures. People are pretty excited for some new sort of single-player content, what that can mean. One little thing first off, we saw a picture of some sort of giant sea kraken. What's up with that? Are we going to be fighting like a kraken of some sort? What was going on with that?
I actually chose that picture because it's an awesome picture, and it looks like some sort of boss or something like that. It was not chosen to be a secret hint as to what's to come.
Well, the fans are always looking for everything.
Sure.
I think we probably got this question off Twitter, and somebody's like, "Oh!"
We should have used a bunny rabbit. It was sorry.
No, because then it would have been you fight a monstrous bunny rabbit as a
Come on.
boss.
Heroes show Diablo riding a unicorn. So yes, they will pick apart every little detail for anything they can get. So careful with that.
Oh, I know. It's just I had to choose something, and it was an awesome piece of art, so that's where we went with it. And it was also a cool boss that you would fight and that sort of thing. Anyway.
That's cool. So the WoW TCG, one is kind of changing subjects. They had these things called raid decks, fairly popular. Have you guys thought about something like that for Hearthstone, something along those lines?
It's certainly something we talked about a while ago. I mean, multiplayer would be super fun. It's, again, a question for what our team is and what it's focused on doing right now and what we feel like is most important to get out there to the community given the amount of work it'd be to get out there. So is it something we've talked about? Absolutely. Is it something that's likely to be in the near future? Probably not, given all of these other things that the community is looking for and that we want to provide for them. So
I'm guessing that answer would also carry over to things like, three-headed giant or emperor or other game variants. It's probably a great idea, but nowhere in the near future.
All of that stuff is stuff I would love to do, but again, It's not in the near future now.
So what is, at this point, do you think, the development timetable for that newly announced adventure mode? I mean, granted, this is Blizzard. We'll see it when we see it, but any even clues to how far out that might be?
Yeah, I'd be more comfortable talking about that if we had, say, made it to open beta at this point, and we're not quite there yet. So once the game is at, we're open beta, and then we have release, and we have the iPad version out, then we'll start talking about those dates.
Understandable. So now we're adding 3 new keys to the arena. What kind of prizes have you guys envisioned for those sort of 10+ wins in a row in the arena with those additions?
The prizes have not changed qualitatively differently. I think the only big change there in arena is that previously you always got 5 boxes. It always gave you 5 boxes, and at the lower levels there was, you know, very little loot in. At the higher levels there was more. Now it's actually at lower levels, here's 2 boxes and here's the loot, and then you get more and more boxes. So it makes a lot more sense to you, you know, oh, I got a box and it had a fair amount of loot in it. Yeah. But as far as the exact things in it, it's still, you know, we still have cards and golden cards at the very top level. For the hardcore arena players, one thing that we are addressing is right now, for certain players, if they get to 8 wins, they don't actually go all the way to 9 wins because there's sometimes less gold in the 9 win because there's golden cards and that sort of thing. So we're making sure we address that so players don't sort of fall into that. But I wouldn't see qualitative changes to sort of the rewards for arena, even with the new, you know, 10, 11, and 12 categories, other than, of course, it'll be more. And
so it's just a quantitative difference. You're just getting more of the same stuff.
Exactly.
I gotcha. Okay. So aside from card backs, when we talk about these proposed prizes for ranked mode, colors, portrait changes, what other ideas have you all been kicking around for those kinds of things?
Well, there's certainly portrait changes in that when you get to 500 wins with a specific class, you get the golden hero for that class. And right now it's the golden hero and those card backs, and I actually think those card backs are going to be crazy awesome. In fact, I know Ben has been doing an awesome job making those card backs. But right now, that's what we're looking at.
Just that too.
Yeah.
The last question we have, just curiosity, sort of more of a statistical thing. What's been the balance thus far in people playing arena games versus the mode games? How's that balance been sitting with the players at this point?
As far as the percentage of players?
Yeah, we're just sort of curious. What have people been gravitating toward most?
That is an excellent question, and I actually don't know the answer to that, of the percentage that people are playing. So you win. You have stumped me. But now I actually kind of want to know. I mean, certainly there are certain types of players, anecdotally, certain players around the office who are like, oh, yeah, arena. Arena is how I want to play, and that's all I play. And there have been other players around the office who go, I love building my deck and having control over it, and have only been playing ranked play. So as far as the percentages, I actually really don't know. Now I'm very curious.
Well, so are we. Well, thanks so much, guys. Been very much enjoying the closed beta, and very excited for you guys to get it out into open. I know you've got to be excited to, watch the world break your game. And
for all of the people who are excited for us to get to open beta, I can tell you we are at least much more excited than that. It's
it's a lot of fun, and thanks so much for your time again, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Great to talk to you.
Yes, you too. Thank you.